Welcome to Sleep and Shrine, and here we have another quiet journey through time. Tonight, we'll wander slowly through the heat-hazed landscapes of a war that never seemed to end, and rarely looked the way it does in the movies. This isn't a tale of heroics or high-octane combat. It's not a story of generals or grand victories. Instead, we'll slip gently into the humid, monotonous hours that shaped the daily reality of the Vietnam War for soldiers, civilians, and all those caught between. You won't be charged into a firefight or rattled by explosions, but you may feel the slow ache of damp clothing against tired skin, the dull, constant buzz of mosquitoes, the uneasy rhythm of waiting, watching, and wandering in a place where every shadow might hide something, or nothing at all. We'll move through 4 chapters tonight. First, the jungle, the place where young men tried to stay alive, minute by minute. Then, a city falling not with fire, but with delay. After that, a world beneath the ground hidden, dark and unrelenting. And finally, an unexpected contrast, the cool bars, quiet briefings, and bureaucratic rhythm of the rear. But for now, it's just you and the war. Let's begin. It's 4:07 a.m. You're somewhere in the Central Highlands, though the names no longer matter. Your boots have been soaked for days. The skin on your feet, soft and crumbling, threatens to peel with every step. Your rifle rests awkwardly against your side. You don't trust it jammed yesterday. You cleaned it again this morning. You'll clean it again tonight. Maybe you won't. The days have stopped meaning anything. You haven't slept. Not really. You've closed your eyes for a few moments under a plastic tarp. It flapped softly in the wind like a tired bird, but your ears never shut off. There's always the possibility of movement in the brush. Your body is hot, but your fingertips are cold. You're dehydrated. You're rationed. Your water yesterday and again today, but the canteen is almost dry now. You swish it, hoping to trick your brain into thinking it's full. It doesn't work. You reach for your rationed canned beef and grayish crackers. They don't taste like anything anymore. You chew methodically. You swallow without thought. Nearby, someone is quietly retching into the leaves. The jungle is still. It's not quiet, but it never is. The trees groan under their own weight. Insects click. A lizard scurries across the moss. The humidity wraps around you like wet wool. There is no breeze. There is no relief. The waiting is the worst part. You walk 12 hours a day and go nowhere. You scan the horizon until your eyes ache. You hear whispers on the radio that never make sense codes, call signs, fragments of orders that shift by the hour. Every leaf might be a sniper's blind. Every path might hold a trap. You learn to fear the ground itself. It has teeth, pungy stakes, sharpened bamboo hidden under brush, dipped in foulness to infect the wounds they cause. You don't talk about it much. Everyone knows. Everyone looks down when they walk. You swat a mosquito from your neck. Another replaces it instantly. When you finally do lie down, it's in mud. It seeps through the seams of your clothing. No longer care. Sleep doesn't come, but you close your eyes anyway. There is no silence here. There is only a different kind of noise, the internal kind. You hear the blood in your ears. It's a distant rotor wash of helicopters you can't see. The phantom crunch of movement that might just be your imagination. Somewhere, there's a firefight, but it's not here. Here, there's just waiting, and dampness, in the impossibility of knowing what happens next. Your mind drifts. You think about home, about laundry machines and ice, about walking into a grocery store with cold tile underfoot, about silence that doesn't buzz. But then your sergeant says something, low, just a name, a direction. You rise slowly, joints stiff, pack heavy. You move forward again, one careful step at a time. The foliage parts, okay? You disappear into it, and so the day continues, slowly, quietly, until it ends, or doesn't. It's 1975. You are not in the jungle now. You are in the city's Saigon capital of South Vietnam, and you are watching it slowly dissolve. It doesn't happen all at once. No sirens, no single moment of alarm. Lapse comes quietly, like water seeping into a cracked wall. At first, it's just the little things. Your neighbor gone, no goodbye, just a padlock on the gate. A fruit vendor raises her prices, then closes her stall completely. The mail stops coming. The power flickers more than usual. Rumors pass through the streets like a breeze. Spurs. The Americans are leaving. No, they'll come back. They've already packed their things. At the U.S. Embassy, the lines begin. Not of diplomats, but of desperate families clutching papers, photos, children. Some sleep on cardboard. Others show up every morning and plead for space on a plane that may never exist. If you walk through the streets of District 1, the change is visible now. Military police patrol, but with less conviction. Soldiers sell their weapons for cash. Helicopters, once everywhere now, fly less often. Their shadows no longer sweep in the rooftops. Inside homes, people burn documents, degrees, identification, cards, English textbooks, things that once opened doors now threaten to mark you as a traitor. The flames curl paper into ash, quietly, carefully, to visit your friend, a professor, once so proud of his scholarship. He's erasing names from his resume. Just in case, he says with a tired smile. You go to the market. The shelves are bare. Okay. One stall sells only onions. Another offers 2 tins of sardines for the price of your monthly wage. You leave empty-handed. The radio plays static. When voices break through, they don't make sense. Announcements overlap. A foreign accent, then a local one, then music, then silence. The final days arrive without warning. On April 28th, you hear bombs fall, real bombs now, not rumors. They strike the airport. The next day, you hear the unmistakable beat of helicopters again, but they're not arriving. They're leaving. The city holds its breath. On April 30th, North Vietnamese tanks roll down the wide boulevards. They pass rusted streetcars and empty newsstands. No resistance, only stunned silence. At the presidential palace, the gates fall open. A red flag rises slowly above the rooftop. Saigon is no more, but the day is still hot. The air still smells faintly of fried garlic and diesel. The ceiling fan still turns. Somewhere, someone is sweeping the sidewalk, as if the world has not just changed. Imagine yourself underground, not in a basement, not a cave, but in a handmade tunnel just wide enough for your shoulders. The walls are clay, damp with sweat and breath. The ceiling hovers inches above your head, and it goes on for miles. Welcome to CUG. You've descended into one of the most elaborate tunnel systems in modern military history, hidden beneath the jungles of southern Vietnam. Dug by hand, reinforced with scavenged materials, and disguised so thoroughly that American patrols often stepped directly above them, unaware. Down here, it's always dark. The light from your dim torch flickers against the narrow walls, casting uneven shadows. The air is warm and stale-filled with the thick, sour scent of oil, feet, and boiled rice. You crawl, not walk, on your hands and knees, sometimes on your belly. The tunnel forks, then forks again. Each turn is mapped in your head because there are no signs, no markers, just memory along the walls. False panels, crawl spaces that lead to sleeping quarters. Tiny rooms with hammocks strung low. Cooking areas with smokeless chimneys that let steam rise meters away in the forest detectable from the air. You pass a medical room. A wounded soldier lies still, his leg wrapped in old bandages, eyes closed, barely breathing, stabs, sweat from his forehead with cloth reused from an old parachute. Further, in a conference chamber, small, cramped, lit only by a single oil lamp. Commanders speak in hushed tones. Maps are drawn in dirt. Orders whispered, rewritten, erased. Every creak above might be boots. Asterisk, every vibration might be a bomb. You hear it now, distant thud. Earth trembles slightly. You hold your breath, wait, then continue. Quietly, there are defenses too. Trapdoors, bamboo spikes, tight loops designed to confuse intruders. If you do not know the system, you are swallowed by it. In some stretches, bats nest. In others, venomous snakes wander in search of rats. Insects swarm. The ceilings weep condensation. The walls feel alive. But this is survival. These tunnels are not just a hiding place. They are a home, a fortress, a school, a hospital, a barracks. They represent a determination, so quiet, so patient, that it can only be measured in inches. You reach a vertical shaft. A rope hangs down. You climb slowly. Each pole brings fresh air. It's faint, dusty, and tinged with grass. And finally, dash daylight. The jungle returns. The tunnel is gone. Nothing reveals. It's where you've been. The earth has swallowed your presence whole. You are still in Vietnam, but not in the jungle. Not anymore. You're stationed in Saigon, or Day, Nan, or at Long Binh Post, one of the sprawling logistical bases set up by the U.S. Army. Here, the war feels like something viewed through a window, present, but at a distance. It's late afternoon. You're in a pressed uniform. Sleeves are short, and the starch itches a little. Here boots are clean scuffed only by tile and gravel paths, not jungle mud. You sit at a desk under a humming, fluorescent light. In front of you, a clipboard, 3 carbon copies of a requisition form, a request for 8 replacement engine blocks. You've filled out this form before, many times. You know the item code by heart. Outside, a Jeep backfires. Someone curses. Someone else is laughing. The war is. Somewhere else, after work, you head to the PX to Post Exchange. It's stocked with American candy bars, razors, Coca-Cola records, paperback novels with bent covers. In the corner, a bored Marine listens to a transistor radio playing Motown. Dinner. It's served at the mess hall. The food isn't great, but it's hot. Beef stew, powdered eggs, coffee that never tastes quite right. Later, you walk to the enlisted men's club. It's lit with dim yellow bulbs, smoke curling up toward slow ceiling fans. There's a bar. You order a beer it's cold, a rare luxury. On stage, a Filipino cover band plays a Beatles song, slightly off-key. A few men nod along, half listening. A game of cards begins at a nearby table. Someone tells a joke that nobody really laughs at. There are rumors. As always, the base might close. The north is advancing. Someone in accounting was caught stealing cigarettes. But here, you learn how much a war is not about combat. It's about copies, supply logs, maintenance reports, daily memos filed in triplicate. Your war is measured in forms per day. Still, you wake every morning and wonder if you'll hear the sirens. If a mortar will fall where you eat lunch, you'll be sent upriver tomorrow, or the next day, or the one after that. And so you fold your uniform, lace your boots, fill out another. Report. Outside, the jungle remains. The helicopters fly. The war continues. With or without you. And so we drift away from Vietnam tonight, not with explosions or headlines, but with humidity, routine, and the quiet echoes of 1,000 untold stories. You've walked the jungle path, waited in the city's breathless hush, crept through darkness underground, and sat beside a man with paperwork instead of a rifle. History doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it whispers. Thank you for joining this quiet journey through time. A journey north into the cold past salt, low ambient wind, keys, gentle ocean swell beneath distant gulls. A slow, deliberate voice begins. Imagine yourself walking across a windswept coastline. The It is cold, but not sharply so. Just enough to keep your breath heavy and your steps slow. Before you, the land opens to rocky soil and stubborn grass. A thin fog drapes across the fjords. The sea behind you is silent now, but not long ago, a near one of the Viking age. Cargo ships cut through these waters, heavy with wool, grain, and salted fish. Tonight, we'll drift far from the firelit tales of Viking raids and thunderous longships. Instead, we'll slip into the quieter parts of Norse life where most people lived and toiled. Far from the glory of saga, we begin with those who stayed behind. The farmers, the fishermen, the weavers, the ones who braved short summers and long winters, year after year, while legends were written elsewhere. So pull a blanket over your shoulders, let the rhythm of the waves settle your breathing, and prepare to journey back to a time when survival meant more than heroism. It meant mud, cold, and waiting for the spring. It's early morning in a Norse village. The sun is barely a suggestion, a pale glow behind the clouds that hang low over the horizon. You wake on a straw-filled mattress tucked against the wall of a wooden longhouse. The air inside smells of old smoke, damp wool, and the sourness of fermented milk. It is cold, even inside, and your breath fogs before you. You pull on thick woolen clothes. They always itch. There is no breakfast waiting for you, only leftover barley porridge, hardened overnight into a sort of edible clay. You eat it anyway, standing, because there's work to do outside your field waits. It's small, just enough for barley, some oats, maybe turnips if the season is kind. The soil here is not generous. It is rocky and thin, with roots that twist like knotted fingers beneath your hoe. You begin to dig, careful not to damage what little you've managed to grow. If your fingers are already sore from yesterday, they'll be sore still by dusk. The wind picks up. It always does. It carries the scent of the sea, but also something else: dampness, decay, the slow breath of the earth warming beneath the frost. A neighbor passes by, dragging a sled filled with firewood. He nods, but doesn't speak. Words are few in the fields. The livestock must be fed. Goats, mostly. Maybe a cow, if your family is fortunate. Their shelter is close, often built onto your home, to share heat in the winter. You shovel the manure by hand, piling it for later use in the fields. There are no holidays, no weekends, only the rhythm of the seasons in the long memory of winters past. By midday, the sun is finally overhead, though it gives no real warmth. You stretch your back. Your hands are numb, not from cold, but from repetition. You do this every day. You have done it since childhood. When winter comes, and it always comes hard, you'll dry fish by the fire and chew on dried berries and reindeer meat if there's enough to spare. You'll patch clothing with sinew and boiled leather. And you'll count your food every few days, just to make sure the math still works. Some say the Viking world was violent, and it was. But the violence that visited farmers was quieter. It came in the form of poor harvests, frozen rivers, lost sheep, children who did not make it through the cold months. You are not a warrior. You do not carry a sword. You carry a hoe and a responsibility to keep growing, keep tending, keep surviving, even when the snow is deep and the sun has vanished for weeks. When the day finally ends, you light a tallow lamp. Its flame is dim, smoky. You sit beside it, patching a hole in your sock. You think of the raiders who went west to richer lands, and quietly you wonder if they know how lucky they are. Not to be here with the mud, the frost, and the endless waiting for the earth to thaw. Now, imagine digging not quickly, not forcefully, but with care. Each movement brushes away the past. Each layer of soil peels back a secret dot. In 1904, on a quiet farm near the Oslofjord in Norway, two farmers discovered something unusual beneath their filled large stones, set in a peculiar shape. They had no idea they were standing atop one of the richest archaeological finds of the Viking world, the Oseberg ship burial. The ship was long about 70 feet, not made for battle, but for elegance. Its prow curled like a serpent, carved with intricate interlacing dragons. The planks were nailed with precision, keeled deep enough to cut through both the river and sea. But this ship had not sailed in centuries. It was buried in clay and turf, not to launch a journey, to carry the dead. Inside the vessel were the remains of two women, one older, possibly in her 70s, the other younger, around 50. They were buried in state. With great care and ceremony. Who they were is still debated. A queen, a priestess, a chieftain's wife, and her handmaiden. The truth sleeps beneath the weight of centuries. What is certain is the richness of what they were given. Fine silk from the east, imported. Wood, intricate sleds and wagons carved with scenes of animals and mythology. Dozens of woven tapestries, faded and fragile, suggested rituals or stories. One showed figures walking toward a great tree, perhaps Yggdrasil, the world tree of Norse belief. There were also the remains of sacrificed animals, horses, dogs, even an ox. Their presence was symbolic, continuation of life, even in death. And yet, despite the richness, there was something almost quiet about it. No weapons, no armor, no signs of conquest. Just artistry, intention, and reverence. As archaeologists removed the ship and its contents, piece by piece, they noticed something subtle. A preservation not from craftsmanship alone, but from the very soil itself. The clay had kept the wood from rotting, the tapestries from disappearing entirely. As if the earth, too, had remembered. The older woman's skeleton revealed a disfigured spine, signs of past illness or injury. She likely walked with pain in her final years. Yet, she had been honored in death with a vessel grander than any Viking warrior. She was not a raider. She may not have even left her village. And yet, she was given a ship, perhaps to carry her to the afterlife, or simply to remember her journey on land. Today, the Oseberg ship rests in a museum, silent, beautiful, its curled prow still pointing toward something unknowable, and the two women who lie at its heart. They remain nameless, but not forgotten, carried forever forward by windless sails into memory. Now, imagine digging not quickly, not forcefully, but with care. Each movement brushes away the past. Each layer of soil peels back a secret dot in 1904 on a quiet farm near the Oslofjord in Norway. Two farmers discovered something unusual beneath their filled large stones, set in a peculiar shape. They had no idea they were standing atop one of the richest archaeological finds of the Viking world, the Oseberg ship burial. The ship was long about 70 feet, not made for battle, but for elegance. Its prow curled like a serpent, carved with intricate interlacing dragons. The planks were nailed with precision, keeled deep enough to cut through both the river and sea. But this ship had not sailed in centuries. It was buried in clay and turf, not to launch a journey, to carry the dead. Inside the vessel were the remains of two women, one older, possibly in her 70s, the other younger, around 50. They were buried in state. With great care and ceremony. Who they were is still debated. A queen, a priestess, a chieftain's wife, and her handmaiden. The truth sleeps beneath the weight of centuries. What is certain is the richness of what they were given. Fine silk from the east, imported. Wood, intricate sleds and wagons carved with scenes of animals and mythology. Dozens of woven tapestries, faded and fragile, suggested rituals or stories. One showed figures walking toward a great tree, perhaps Yggdrasil, the world tree of Norse belief. There were also the remains of sacrificed animals, horses, dogs, even an ox. Their presence was symbolic, continuation of life, even in death. And yet, Despite the richness, there was something almost quiet about it. No weapons, no armor, no signs of conquest. Just artistry, intention, and reverence. As archaeologists removed the ship and its contents, piece by piece, they noticed something subtle. A preservation not from craftsmanship alone, but from the very soil itself. The clay had kept the wood from rotting, the tapestries from disappearing entirely. As if the earth, too, had remembered. The older woman's skeleton revealed a disfigured spine, signs of past illness or injury. She likely walked with pain in her final years. Yet, she had been honored in death with a vessel grander than any Viking warrior. She was not a raider. She may not have even left her village. And yet, she was given a ship, perhaps to carry her to the afterlife, or simply to remember her journey on land. Today, the Oseberg ship rests in a museum, silent, beautiful, its curled prow still pointing toward something unknowable, and the two women who lie at its heart. They remain nameless, but not forgotten, carried forever forward by windless sails into memory. Now, imagine warmth, not the gentle warmth of a hearth at home, but the dense, smoky heat of a crowded longhouse at dusk. The air is thick with the smell of roasted meat, spilled ale, damp wool, and pine resin. The light is dim, golden, flickering, across timber beams that rise like ribs into shadow. You are inside a Jarl's great hall, a place of feasting, storytelling, and subtle warfare of another kind, unlike the toil of the farmer or the austerity of the voyage. This is a world of contrast where wealth gathers, where reputation is sharpened like a blade, and where each guest holds both knife and word as weapons. The Jarl, seated at the high seat, watches all. His beard is silvered with age, but his posture remains straight. His tunic is dyed and trimmed with fur. Rings adorn his fingers. He is not simply a war leader, but a judge, a landlord, and a figurehead. To dine here is to be noticed. The meal is long. It begins with cured fish and black bread. Then comes roasted lamb, stewed roots, boiled grains, mixed with honey. Bowls pass from hand to hand, and the servants refill drinking horns with meat thick, sweet, and strong. Conversations hum, some soft, others sharp. There are skalds, two poets who recite verses over lyre or harp. Their stories are old, of Odin, of great voyages, of betrayal and vengeance. But every so often, a line changes. A new hero appears, a name you recognize. Maybe even your own. At the Jarl's table, history is rewritten in real time, and yet the feast is not only food and flattery. Boasting is a ritual here. Guests rise, one by one, to tell of their deeds, how many ships they've taken, how many wolves they've slain, how much silver they've hidden beneath the floorboards of a distant church. But boasting is dangerous. A poorly chosen word, an accidental insult, a challenge to sharpen the mood shifts. A glance becomes a glare. Jest becomes a judgment. And knives that once carved meat rest uneasily at sides. Still, no one acts too quickly. This is not a battlefield. This is a performance. Each insult is measured, each laugh rehearsed. The Jarl watches still. If there is to be blood, it must be justified, controlled. He cannot allow chaos, only the illusion of it. Some nights, the tension breaks with music. Other nights, with spilled drink. And rarely but not, never with spilled blood. The next morning, the hall would smell of old fire and mead. The servants will sweep away the bones and wipe down the benches. The Jarl will rise early, meet with his council, settle land disputes, prepare for the next feast. This is power in the Viking world. Not just swords and sails, but the ability to gather men, feed them, impress them, and intimidate them without ever lifting a weapon. If you were here, you'd feel it. The weight of reputation. The cost of every word spoken aloud, the silent calculations behind every smile. This is not the world of the farmer, nor of the raider. This is the world of the elite, and it is just as cold, just as dangerous, only in a different key. And now you return. You've walked the furrows of frozen fields with Viking farmers, felt the frost in your boots, the hunger in your belly, and the quiet patience required just to survive another day. You've sailed with Leif Erikson, not in glory, but in silence. You've rocked on open seas, drifting toward an uncertain shore, guided only by clouded skies and stubborn hope. You've descended into the stillness of a buried ship, where two unknown women sleep among carved sleds and sacred cloth. Their names may be lost, but their story remains. And finally, you've stepped into the flickering half-light of a Jarl's longhouse, where power is measured in whispers, and every boast is a blade. History often tells us stories in bold lines of battles won, kings crowned, lands discovered. But between those lines, there are quieter truths, the daily ache of labor, the breath between storms, the silence before the skald speaks. The Vikings are often remembered for their violence, their raids, their gods, their iron. But beneath that legacy is a world of rhythm, of cold winters, its hard soil, cautious voyages, and nights spent watching the fire crackle against the carved walls of wooden halls. And now you can leave that world behind. The sea grows.com. The wind softens. The longhouse grows dark. The voices fade. Here, in the quiet of the present, you can rest, knowing the past, in all its struggle and stillness, has gently unfolded beside you. Sleep well. May the stories keep you company long after you've drifted beyond them. Welcome. Tonight, we drift back to a time of powdered wigs and powdered kegs, of revolutionary slogans whispered in smoky cafes, secrets traded across narrow, crooked streets. This is Paris in the 1790s, not the Paris of postcards or candlelit walks, but a city gripped by uncertainty, where ideals gave way to fear, where bread was scarce and silence was safer than speech. Here, your fate could change with the wind. One wrong phrase, one unshaven suspicion could send you from your mattress in the garret to a cold wooden cart headed for the Place de la Revolution. But this journey is not about the spectacle of execution. It is about life. The grinding, anxious, often absurd daily existence of those who lived, not just died, through one of history's most disorienting upheavals. Let yourself settle in as we walk the alleys of revolutionary Paris. Listen to the ghosts of speeches past and explore what it was truly like to survive or not survive the French Revolution. Imagine this. You're waking in a cramped apartment, a single room tucked beneath the eaves of a tenement in the Faubourg Saint-Antoine. Outside, the sky is gray. It's always gray, or it feels that way. Your mattress is thin, stuffed with straw that pokes through the seams. You share the space with a sibling, or a spouse, or a stranger. Water comes from a communal pump. Bread it's available as coarsely ground and hard by midday. If there are eggs, they are boiled until rubbery. Meat, rare. Wine, watered. You rise early because the queues begin at dawn. And so, you queue capped in layers, carrying a dented tin pail, not just for bread or soup, but for news, because today's decree may not match yesterday's. Yesterday, wearing a silk cravat was fashionable. Today, it's suspicious. Tomorrow, it could be fatal. You look at your neighbors differently now. The quiet man with the well-cut coat, a former aristocrat, perhaps hiding in plain sight, or a Jacobin loyalist watching for disloyalty. Children chant revolutionary songs. Posters shout the words liberté, eagle-eyed, fraternit. But real liberty is elusive. Paper is everywhere. Pamphlets, decrees, denunciations. One of them might contain your name. You speak carefully, even at home. Walls are thin, so are friendships. Survival means blending in, wearing the bonnet rouge, using the right words, citoyen, not monsieur, saying you admire Robespierre without sounding too eager. Even fashion has consequences. Too fine, you're a suspect. Too plain, you're mocking the cause. And then there's the food. Always the food. You eat turnips, black bread, maybe dried beans. Flour is adulterated. Salt is expensive. Sugar, a memory. Some days, the baker's shelves are bare by midday, and you wait. You hear footsteps down the corridor. Knock on a neighbor's door. Muffled shouts. Name. The next morning, that apartment is silent. People vanish in revolutionary Paris, not just at the guillotine, but in stairwells, courtyards, police archives. The rhythm of life becomes cautious. You move with purpose. You speak in hushed tones. You watch and hope no one is watching you. Evenings are the most dangerous time. By candlelight, people read the lists. The accused, condemned. Neighbors exchange glances. Who will be next? Side. You hear the carts rumbling by. Covered wagons on cobblestones. The city smells of smoke, iron, wet stone. The scent of fear lingers like fog, and still you go to bed on your straw mattress in your cold, damp room, wondering what tomorrow's slogans will demand, and whether you will still be among the living to hear them. Imagine a young man, born an heiress to a modest household. Father absent, mother gone too soon. A quiet boy, bookish, serving his world, formed through pages and principle. His name is Maximilian Robespierre, and long before his name would conjure fear in whispered conversations across France, he would pass unnoticed in the lecture halls of the Lycée Louis le Grand in Paris. He was a scholarship student reserved, always neatly dressed, often alone. He read Rousseau with reverence. The idea that man could return to virtue, that society could be reshaped through moral clarity, took root deep in his being. It would guide everything that followed. After graduating in law, he returned to Arras, took on small cases, defended the voiceless. He was praised for his composure, his incorruptibility, his seeming gentleness. They called him the Incorruptible lad. And yet, fast forward to 1791. The revolution is in motion. Robespierre has emerged not with thunder, but with a steady, tireless voice, calm, precise, repetitive. He speaks often, too often. Some whisper. He warns of tyranny, treason, of enemies hiding in plain sight. In the assembly, he stands not for power, but for purity. No war with foreign monarchies. He argues wars breed generals, and generals breed dictators. No death penalty until, of course, death becomes the means to preserve the republic itself. You watch him evolve, from cautious idealist to fierce defender of the terror. It does not happen all at once. First, he demands trials, then swifter trials, then none at all. The revolution must be protected, he says. It must be defended, not just from aristocrats, but from within. Corruption, ambition, counter-revolution. These become enemies that live in shadows, must be rooted out. He joins the Committee of Public Safety, and from there, the lists grow. Longer, he still dresses neatly, still walks home each evening through the rain-slick streets, still writes speeches by candlelight. But now, his eyes look heavier. His voice, though calm, grows thinner. He rarely smiles. Colleagues begin to fear him. His silences weigh heavier than his speeches once did. You see him at the peak of his power, when even a shrug from Robespierre could doom a man. Yet, he never raises his voice. He never celebrates the crowds at the guillotine. He merely says, the revolution devours its enemies. Eventually, it devours him too. By 1794, the convention turns. The terror he nurtured becomes unbearable. Colleagues who once applauded now whisper in corridors. On the 9th of Thermidor, he is arrested. He attempts to speak, but the assembly drowns him out. That night, he is wounded, his jaw shattered, perhaps by his own hand. The next day, in the same square where so many fell, he is laid beneath the blade, still silent, still dressed and simple. Blacked out, and in the silence after, Paris breathes differently. The lists begin to shorten. The committees disband, but the shadow remains. The man who tried to purify the world was consumed by the very fire he kindled. And as you drift in thought, you imagine him again, young, idealistic, sitting at his desk with Rousseau, believing, perhaps too deeply, that one man's virtue could save a nation. Now, imagine, a palace fallen silent, not the opulent noise of Versailles, but the hushed, eerie quiet of confinement. The year is 1793, and in a windowless cell, somewhere deep inside the Temple prison in Paris, sits a boy, alone. He is 8 years old. His name is Louis Charles. But history would come to know him as Louis XVII, a king who never reigned, a child who vanished into rumor, sorrow, in the mists of revolution. He was born into gold and silk, the second son of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. Bright-eyed, spirited, said to be quick with laughter before the walls closed in. When his elder brother died, Louis Charles became the Dauphin, heir to the throne, but the throne, by then, was already crumbling. The revolution swept across France like a storm. Palaces emptied, titles dissolved, and by August 1792, the royal family was imprisoned. In January 1793, his father was executed. It is said the child never saw it. Surely, he felt it. From that moment on, his life shifted, not from comfort to hardship, but from visibility to silence. His mother and sister remained nearby, until even they were taken from him. He was placed under the care, such a word can be used, of a jailer named Antoine Simon. Simon was not cruel by nature, but he was not gentle either. The boy, once swaddled in velvet, now lived among vermin. His days became aimless. No education, no companionship, only the weight of expectation and the echo of adult decisions. He grew thin, he grew sick, and soon he stopped speaking altogether. Those who caught brief glimpses of him described a boy who barely moved, his eyes vacant, his hands trembling. And then, in June 1795, after 2.5 years in confinement, Louis Charles, the last son of Louis and Marie, died. Of what, exactly? Historians debate. Tuberculosis, malnutrition, neglect. Most agree was the truest cause. But the mystery did not end there. You see, before he died, no one in the outside world had seen him for months. When his death was announced, many refused to believe it. Rumors spread. Had he been smuggled out? Had another child taken his place in the cell? Had loyalists spirited him away to raise him in secret? Dozens of men over the next century would claim to be the lost Dauphin. Some believed it. Some, perhaps, even hoped it was true. But the most curious part of the story came years later. In 1846, a preserved human heart, tiny, shriveled, sealed, in a glass urn was found in a jar at the Basilica of St. Denis. It bore an inscription, Heart of Louis XVII. It had been stolen, hidden, lost, rediscovered, passed from hand to hand like a relic of a vanished age for over 150 years. It remained a puzzling till DNA testing in the early 2000s finally confirmed it. The heart belonged to the boy. Died in the temple, Louis Charles. Louis XVII. He never ruled. He never led an army. He never gave a speech. And yet, his story outlasted kings and empires, not because of what he did, but because of what he symbolized. Innocence crushed by history's weight. And now he rests among his ancestors, a child wrapped in centuries of silence, remembered not for the power he never held, but for the quiet tragedy of being born at the wrong time. Before the tumults, before the blood in the streets and the smoke in the sky, there was Versailles, a palace unlike any other. Not merely a building, but a world unto itself. Imagine yourself there, walking beneath gilded ceilings that reflect golden candlelight, past walls where mirrors stretch endlessly, echoing power, beauty, and something else. A stillness that comes from ritual that Versailles was not designed for comfort. It was built for spectacle, the rhythm of life inside its V. Walls was not spontaneous, but orchestrated like a ballet performed each day. Again and again, at the center of it all, the king, and around him, a constellation of nobility, bound by protocols so intricate that even a glance, a nod, handkerchief offered, carried meaning for Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Every morning began with a ritual, the lever of the royal. Rising, the king did not wake in silence, but with an audience, courtiers assembled as he was dressed, each one hoping for the honor of handing him a sleeve, a shoe, a comb. Even the act of sitting on a certain stool could be a privilege fought. Over 4 years, Marie Antoinette had her own chamber, rich with silks and floral pastels. There, her hair would be piled impossibly high, powdered into snowy shapes, sometimes adorned with miniature ships or birds in wire cages. Perfume filled the air, smell of roses, violets, ambergris. But beneath the sweetness lay a truth. Bathing was infrequent. Water was believed to spread illness. Instead, scent-concealed days were structured around appearances. Formal meals eaten under the gaze of others. Endless card games, concerts, and walks in carefully manicured gardens, where not even a leaf strayed out of place. The queen had her petty Trianon, a smaller palace within the palace, and behind it, a curious playground, the HMEA. It looked like a rustic village cottages, watermills, chickens, but it was no more real than the wigs or powdered cheeks. The milkmaids were actresses. The pails were polished. Even the cows were groomed up there. She played at simplicity, wearing muslin, dresses and straw hats surrounded by flowers, and artfully arranged hay. It was charming. It was escapist, and too many outside the palace gates. It was offensive, for the people of Paris were not playing at poverty. They lived it. While Versailles feasted, they lined up for bread, while courtiers debated dance cards and dowries. Farmers watched their crops rot under the weight of taxes, and still, life inside the palace continued, unaware, or perhaps unwilling, to see the ground shifting beneath their silk slippers. There were signs, pamphlets, still mocking the queen as Madame Deficit, slogans whispered in salons, crowds growing less deferential, and yet the balls continued. The chandeliers gleamed. The fountains sang in the gardens, until October 1789. A crowd marched on Versailles, not with fanfare, but with fury. The palace guards were overrun. The king and queen were forced to appear on the balcony to face the people they had ruled from, a distance for too long. That night, the royal family was escorted to Paris. They would never return to Versailles. The palace grew still. The court dissolved, and yet the rooms remain. Even now, if you visit, you can walk those echoing halls. You can stand where kings once dressed before an audience, where queens powdered their hair beneath painted ceilings. The mirrors are still, polished. The chandeliers still hang. But the silence now is not of ritual. It is remembrance. Versailles endures as a monument, not only to elegance and grandeur, but to a way of life that drifted, quietly and inevitably, toward its own twilight. And so, as the candlelight fades from the gilded mirrors of Versailles, as the cries of revolution soften into distant memory, and as the smoky air of revolutionary Paris settles into stillness, you find yourself back in the quiet of now. You've walked through cold alleys lined with suspicion and starvation, witnessed the slow unraveling of a man who began with ideals and ended in silence. and heard the muted heartbeats of children and kings alike, echoing through stone walls, prison, cells, and perfumed corridors. History, when viewed up close, is rarely grand or glorious. It is lived in cracked boots and half-empty bread sacks, drafty rooms lit by flickering lanterns, and whispered fears and forgotten rituals. And yet, it endures. The rhythms of those lives, the slow march from day to night, from certainty to collapse, from silence to roar and back again, they still echo, gently beneath our modern feet. Here, in the quiet dark, you might feel a certain comfort in that no matter how turbulent the past, how uncertain the turning of the wheel, you are now warm, still, safe. Outside, the world may continue to shift and hum, but here, in this moment, wrapped in the calm weight of history and time, you are at rest. Let the revolution sleep. Let the palaces fall. Let the streets grow silent once more, and let yourself drift as the past fades softly like mist at dawn. Good night. Welcome. You've found your way to a quiet place. A place where history unfolds, not with noise and chaos, but gently, like the pages of an old scroll turned slowly in the light of an oil lamp. Tonight, we step back into the Roman Empire, but not into the shining white marble of the Senate, nor the grand echoes of the Colosseum. Not even the busy streets of Pompeii before the ash dot. No, this journey begins at the outer edges, far from Rome, far from comfort. At the damp, wind-blown borderlands of northern Britannia, where discipline mattered more than gold, and where the empire met the wild. Together, we'll explore the quiet hardships of Roman frontier life, the rise of a Celtic queen who defied the legions, the long-lost voices preserved in the damp earth, in the strange, indulgent world of the Roman elite, just a few hundred miles away. Let your mind rest, let your breathing slow, and imagine yourself not as a hero, but simply someone trying to make it through another gray Roman day. Imagine yourself waking up in a wooden barrack. The cold has settled into the bones of the building and to yours. Your blanket, such as it is thin and smells faintly of smoke and damp wool. It's still dark, but the duty horn has already sounded that you are a Roman auxiliary posted to Hadrian's wall. It is the northernmost edge of the empire. Think it's raining. Again, the wall itself is impressive. 73 miles of stone and turf, slicing across Britannia from coast to coast. But to you, it's just where you live. You don't see glory in it. You see mud. Endless, clingy, ankle-deep mud. Today's duties are posted at dawn. You might be on patrol, marching the same short path back and forth until your sandals squelch. Or perhaps guard duty at one of the mile castle's tiny fortlets spaced along the wall. There, you'll peer out over misty moorland, eyes scanning for smoke from a distant campfire or the movement of someone beyond the trees. And yet, nothing usually happens. No grand battles, no glorious conquests. It's just the cold, the waiting, and the quiet, suspicious gaze of the locals. Meals are dependable, barley porridge, a slice of salted pork, if you're lucky. The bread is dense and hard. You chew it slowly, not out of enjoyment, but because there's nothing else to do. Sanitation. You visit the latrina communal trench with a shared sponge on a stick. The term luxury never makes it this far north. In the evenings, if you're not assigned night duty, you might visit the tavern just outside the fort. The drinks are weak, the conversation weaker, but it's warm inside, and sometimes there's music played on a small lyre. Some soldiers write letters, others carve graffiti into stone walls. Drawings of soldiers, crude jokes, the names of loved ones they haven't seen in years, and might never again. Your uniform never quite dries. Your feet are always sore. And while you live under the eagle of Rome, you sometimes wonder if the Senate has even heard of this place. And then there are the Britons, the ones beyond the wall, Tribes who resist Rome's reach, not with full armies, but with sabotage, raids, and ambushes. They know this land better than any general. They vanish into the forest like spirits, and every once in a while, a patrol doesn't come back. But more often than not, nothing happens. And so you march, you drill, you clean your gear. You try not to think about home, because home is far away. Hadrian's Wall doesn't care if you're tired, wet, or forgotten. The wall remains, stone upon stone, patient, silent, watching. It is the perhaps 61 of the Common Era. The Roman grip on Britannia is firm, but not absolute. It's far from the marble forms of Rome. A storm begins to rise in the east. Her name is Boudica. You may have heard the legend fears red hair, chariot wheels, slicing through Roman formations. But tonight, we move past the myth, and into the slow-burning reality. Imagine a quiet village on the outskirts of Roman Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester. Stone walls rising where once there were huts. A Roman temple being built on sacred land. Latin spoken in the markets. In taxes always, more taxes. The people are uneasy. But it takes more than unease to light a rebellion. It begins with betrayal. When Boudica's husband, Protesilaus, king of the Iceni, dies, he leaves his kingdom jointly to his daughters and to Rome. But Rome does not recognize joint ownership, and Rome does not honor Celtic tradition. The Romans arrive not as guests, but as debt collectors. The queen is publicly humiliated, her daughters even more so. Their names are not preserved in the records, only their suffering. This moment does not erupt in violence. It simmers. Word spreads quietly among the Iceni, then the Trinovantes, then others. Old grievances resurface like embers under Ashdod, and then the revolt begins. Camulodunum is first. The Roman veterans living there wealthy, proud, dismissive are overwhelmed. The town is razed, not just defeated, erased. Next comes Londinium, the time, a small but bustling hub on the River Thames. Imagine the panic, smoke drifting up from the horizon. The decision by Governor Suetonius to evacuate the city, not to defend it. Port to abandon it. Those who remain merchants, the elderly, the poor, left behind. And the flames come, right against the gray British sky. The kind of fire you feel before you see. The Roman accounts say tens of thousands died, but the numbers blur with time. What remains clear is this: for a brief moment, the might of Rome faltered, and yet the rebellion cannot hold. Suetonius gathers his forces, not a grand army, but enough, trained, disciplined, and vengeful. They meet the rebels on open ground. The Britons have numbers, passion, desperation, but they lack tactics, and the Roman shield wall does not break. The massacre is swift. One side, trained to fight, the other is to avenge. After the battle, Boudica vanishes from history. Some say she poisoned herself, others that she fell sick. Some believe she escaped into the misted woods, and lived still in legend, and the rebellion. It burns out, but not before leaving a scarring Roman pride on British soil and on the memory of a queen who dared to defy an empire. But sometimes the clearest voices of history come not from generals or queens, but from those who left behind only their handwriting. Us descend now not into legend, but into letters sealed by time, and found centuries later beneath the quiet soil of a Roman fort. Not all traces of Roman life are carved in stone or told through epic battles. Some of them are written on thin sheets of wood, tiny, delicate rectangles no larger than your hand. The Vindolanda tablets discovered near Hadrian's Wall, buried beneath layers of cold northern earth. These humble wooden postcards, nearly 2,000 years old, bring us closer to the ordinary people of the Roman Empire than perhaps any monument ever could. Imagine holding one, light, fragile, The ink faded, yet still legible, still whispering voices from the past. Let's begin with a party invitation from Claudia Svera to her friend Sulpicia Lepidina. I sent you a warm invitation to come to us for the day of the celebration. I shall expect you, sister. Farewell. Sister, my dearest soul, Claudia, a Roman officer's wife, writing not to command, but to connect. You can almost hear the tone fond, familiar, even playful, perhaps. She adds a postscript in her own hand, making it one of the earliest known examples of Latin written by a woman. It's not a proclamation. It's not law. It's simply friendship. Other tablets reveal more mundane realities. Soldiers' request for more socks, another for underpants. One man writes urgently, complaining that his messmates are lazy and drink too much. Another document lists supplies: wheat, barley, hides, nails. There are duty rosters, carefully written schedules assigning men to patrol, watch duty, stable, work, and then there are the shopping lists: honey, fish sauce, olive oil, luxuries brought from across the empire. Okay? Imagine the anticipation. The smell of spices unpacked from a newly arrived caravan. And then imagine the disappointment when the supplies are short. One officer writes about the difficulties of dealing with locals, traders who overcharge, or people who simply won't cooperate. Another complains about the climate: wet, chilling, inescapable. The wall between cultures, between Roman and Britain, was not just physical, it was linguistic, culinary, social, and yet the lines blurred. Some locals adopted Roman dress, spoke a version of Latin, served in auxiliary units. Others remained apart, watching from beyond the wall. And through it all, the garrison at Vindolanda lived out their quiet, routine days, writing letters, requesting goods, worrying about socks, not conquering empires, but enduring them. Many of the tablets were discarded, used to scrap, or swept into ditches, forgotten, preserved only because the soil was waterlogged, docks agentless, perfect for preservation. And so, when they were uncovered, they still spoke, not of glory, but of daily life, of cold nights, missed friends, in the rhythm of a soldier's world. One man writes, I have sent you 50 oysters. I hope they arrive in good condition. Oysters from the coast, to wall. Even on the edge of empire, someone, somewhere, longed for a taste of home. And now we drift one last time. It's from wooden barracks to villas of marble and mosaic, from the wet winds of Vindolanda to the soft cushions of a Roman governor's drawing room. Let's end our journey, kin, comfort, while soldiers huddled in damp wooden barracks along the frontier. Farther south of Vin, just a few days' journey, but a world apart, Roman governors reclined on cushioned couches in sprawling country villas. Here, the air was warmer. The walls were decorated with frescoes, not moss. The wine flowed more freely, and the complaints were far less about socks. Welcome to the world of provincial elites, of senatorial appointments, strategic bribery, and mid-afternoon feasts. Imagine waking, not to the sound of a trumpet, but to birdsong through an open courtyard. A servant draws back the curtain of your room, bringing a tray, bread, still warm, figs, and a cup of honeyed wine. You are the governor of Britannia, or Hispania, or Syria. Your name will likely not echo through the centuries. You are no Caesar, no Augustus, but you wield power quietly, absolutely, of a life, a tiny economy in your province. Your villa is equipped with underfloor heating, a hypercar system humming gently beneath your mosaic floors. Slaves and freedmen bustle through shadowed halls. Your bath is drawn, the water is scented. You sit in the atrium and listen to petitions. A landowner has a dispute about taxes. Merchant complains about tariffs. Centurion brings news of unrest. In the north, you nod. You make notes on wax tablets. You offer calm words, promises of investigation, and perhaps accept a small gift in return. Corruption in the Roman world was not a failure of the system. It was, more often, part of it. Appointments to distant provinces were expensive. Bribes were expected, and once in office, a governor was expected to recoup his losses, often through increased taxes, favors sold, or local contracts granted at generous rates. There were dinners, of course, long reclining affairs in the triclinium, plates of olives, cheese, roasted dormice, yes, truly served with herbs and honey. Entertainment included poetry readings, musicians from the East, perhaps a gladiator demonstration in the courtyard, or an educated debate on Virgil's verses, and afterward, perhaps a walk in the garden, a quiet path bordered by laurel and lavender, the scent of pine and damp stone. From this world, the frontier seemed distant. Even the concept of Rome itself could feel abstract. The empire, for these governors, was not an idea to be defended, but a lifestyle to be maintained. Of course, villa life was not without its challenges. Rival elites might send damning letters to Rome, accusing you of mismanagement. A visiting inspector from the emperor might arrive unannounced. There was always a risk, however small, that your comfort might be interrupted by the whims of politics. Still, most of the time, your days passed in patterned repetition. Breakfast, petitions, letters, bath, dinner, conversation, sleep, and outside the villa walls, life in the province went on. Farmers plowed under the rain. Slaves tended vines and fields. Soldiers patrolled wet roads, and the empire endured. So now, the oil lamps burned low in the villa halls, as the watchmen settled into their posts at Hadrian's wall, as the last scroll is rolled shut at the edge of empire. You may find yourself drifting to dot from frost-bitten barracks to smoky hearths, from the cry of revolt to the scratch of pen on wood, from feasts to field patrols. The Roman world was vast, complicated, enduring, and as the centuries passed, its stones would crumble, its legions would fade, its governors would vanish into dust. But for now, in this quiet moment, you've seen it not as legend, but as lived. And so, we leave the Roman frontier behind, from the cold, endless drizzle over Hadrian's wall, to the crackling hearth where letters were penned, to the candlelit halls of villas where power whispered gently between goblets of wine. You have walked the length of empire, not as an emperor, but as a witness, not in triumph, but in observation, a life among the mud and leather of a soldier's kit, among the rebellion of a queen whose name would echo through history, among the wooden tablets, scratched in haste and hope, and finally, among the perfumed courtyards of those who ruled from armchairs rather than battlefields. The Roman Empire was not only marble columns and Latin verse, it was also routine. It was also discomfort. It was also ordinary, and it is often in the ordinary, in the shared aches and comforts of daily life, that we find our truest connection to the past.